This is a quick, hopefully 10-minute tutorial on what problem-based learning should look like. This is a PowerPoint Google presentation that has about 30 slides. I'm going to scroll through them reasonably quickly. I want to hit the highlights about what I want you to consider when you approach a case using problem-based learning. This is a method that has been used in medical schools for about the last 35 years in the United States and Canada to better the learning of physicians and nurse practitioners and dentists, physical therapists, and a lot of other people in the medical field. And it revolves around not memorizing everything about everything first and then trying to figure it out, but rather consider the patient, look at what's going on with the patient, and then learn what you need to learn about that region. The 4 steps are on the page in front of you: planning, research, diagnosis, and treatment. I'm going to roll through these, but like I said, I'm going to do this fairly quickly and try to make sure I hit some of the highlights. Best way to do this, I think, is with an example. And one of the first things you're going to see on all of these cases is a synopsis of the patient's case. This is similar to what would happen if you went to a doctor's office and the nurse or the medical assistant did a history of the present illness, something called an HPI, and you put in the relevant information. For this case, there's a young man that is having some stomach issues, and you have a little bit of history of what's been going on with him for the last day or two, and a little bit about what his life is like. First step of every problem-based case is the planning step, and I think the best thing to do for these group presentations is to do this as a Google Doc where everybody can share and contribute, and you can color code who does what and who contributes what, and you can all keep track of the information, the data, and especially the citations, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Having said all that, the first case that you're going to do is actually an individual case to make sure you have every piece of that puzzle understood, so that when you go to work in a team, you'll understand what everybody else is doing. It's just a global picture. Okay? So make sure you include a picture of the patient, a history of the present illness, and then also a PBL chart, which I'll be running through pretty quickly on the next few slides. Here's a sample planning page. Like we said, include a picture, tell what's going on in your own words. You're basically writing a note to the next person down the line so that they can understand what's going on with your patient. PBL chart: facts, problems, hypotheses, and learning issues. I'm going to roll through these in terms of what you need to include in the chart, but one of the first things we want you to recognize from GOA's perspective, but also just from a learning perspective and a pedagogical realm, is don't use the internet. For this first step, I want you to think. I want you to gather data only from what's been provided in the case. Sometimes that will be frustrating. A lot of the times it should be fine. You'll get practice at knowing what to include and what you can skip over. But for the most part, for these early cases, you're going to try to include as much as you can to make sure you don't miss anything. Listing the facts in the table, any and all information. You're trying to put a list together so that you can set up a research page later on. You're trying to figure out what questions you need to answer, and there's steps to this. And the first one is facts. Don't forget relevant details. And for right now, pretty much everything is relevant because you don't know what's not relevant until you've been trained. So simple things as boy or girl. For some people, the idea of what they do for sports every day, what they do as their morning routine, it depends on the doctor, it depends on the situation, but literally at this point, you're going to include almost everything about what's going on with that patient and why they're in your office. Including that Nick is 17 and that he's stressed. The pictures help make it a little bit interesting and fun, but like I said, you're going to do most of this on a Google Doc with your team. So here is that page created with columns and tables and rows, just something simple, but it includes the facts that we think are going to be relevant. And you can see how this is going to scroll from left to right into problems, hypothesis, and learning issues, which is another way of saying research. So facts that might be the problem, facts that you want to end up having answers for, that's what you want to put in this list. And as it says on this screen, if you're not sure, list it, and then you'll figure out later on whether or not to include it. So here we have the problems that we're worried about on first blush for this case, for this practice case. He hasn't slept, he's in pain, he's stressed out, what's going on, what did he eat, You know, if he's got stomach pain, what he ate is relevant. Whether or not he slept is relevant. Whether or not he's stressed is relevant, because we haven't figured out what's not relevant yet, so we include everything. What could be wrong? These are guesses, right? These are educated guesses. Non-specific is just fine. Broad is better until you can narrow it down, and narrowing it down includes research. So at this point, the hypotheses and identifying what you want to research is more important, so broader is better. And here you see stomach problems, there's some stress, it might be food poisoning, he doesn't sleep a whole lot, you know, just stuff that you want to research. So this is an important step, learning issues and identifying what you need to define, what is appropriate for your case, what's relevant in the anatomy and the physiology. This is called regional anatomy, or another word could be surgical anatomy, which is if you're worried about the stomach, what's there? What else is in that region of the body that could be influencing the case or influenced by the case? And the more you know about what's going on nearby, the better guess you're going to be able to make. So anatomy and physiology is a huge part of learning these cases. Spread a broad net just means don't leave anything out. At this point, you still haven't looked at the internet, you still haven't been told to narrow it down, you're trying to include everything to have a broad palette on which to paint. So there's a completed table for you. Should be fairly straightforward. You can see that the learning issues are questions. What's going on with our patient? What are the possibilities? And like I said a couple times now, what are we going to research? What are we going to look at? So, step 2, research. You want to divide these up and conquer as a group. The first case is individualized, but everything else is working as teams. Dividing and conquering, having a conversation with your team to determine who's interested in what and who wants to do what type of research on certain topics is a huge collaboration tool. So I want you guys to become adept in being willing to divide things up. And even if it's something you're not terribly comfortable with, you'll learn more if you read about something that you don't know much about, which is the whole point of this. So going into areas where you're uncomfortable in terms of research or stuff that you're not as clear on, that is what makes this exciting. So I want you to be excited. Feel free to use the internet. We have a resource page set up on Canvas to get you started, and I'll show you that in a couple of slides, or maybe next. But the idea is primary, primary, primary. Wikipedia is great as a tool to get you started, but it is not a primary source. Make sure you scroll to the bottom of the Wikipedia page and take a look at the primary articles. They will be contributors and contributing authors and other things that you can research. So Wikipedia can be a door to get you into a research topic, but it is not going to be your main resource. You'll still want to cite it, but you won't want to use it as a primary source. You'll have to cite it as a secondary or a tertiary. Keeping track of your sources, the last point on this page, is an important one. There's a couple different tools you can use. You can actually just set up a Google Doc for it, or you can make a page in your own Google Doc with the problem-based learning for each case. Either way you do it, you talk to your group about how you want to do it. There's a few websites out there that will help you. One of those is called Live Binders, which allows you to keep track of websites that you use in order to set up a citation page. This doesn't really have to be rocket science. You have to cite everything. So how you choose to remember them is up to you. It's just knowing now, as you start the process, to cite everything and keep track of all the URLs and include them. That's why some citation pages are going to be 3 and 4 long, especially on the complicated cases. Here's a photo of the Canvas resource page. This is 1F inside the module, and you can always go back to this one. There are links within each case that take you back to the resource page. If they don't work or if there's a question, let me know and I'll help guide you. But you can see here the list of reliable health and medical sites. It includes WebMD, the Mayo Clinic, the AMA. There's lots out there. Just make sure you trust them. Comprehensive is important. Spread a broad net, which I've already said. Don't forget to address the anatomy and physiology. That's where your learning is really going to start. I'm not going to lecture you on the anatomy or the physiology. I want you guys to lecture each other. I want you guys to learn it as a group and then bring it back to the team and bring it back to me. I can help guide if you get lost or if you're confused, but really this is self-driven. Take a look at some websites. If you need some help figuring out which ones to use or other resources, that's when I'll get involved and help guide you. But it's up to you to figure out what is going on with the anatomy and the physiology of whatever region you're studying. Keep it interesting to you. I don't want the research to be tedious. I don't want it to be boring. I don't want you to feel bogged down in trying to find the exact right source or the exact right quote. If you want to go down a path of a little bit stranger diagnosis or a little bit stranger thought, or like, I don't really know where this is going, what should I do? Feel free, do it, go for it. I want to learn as much as you guys do. And sometimes the mainstream isn't the best way to do that. So if the research becomes tedious, change your direction. Go look at something else and try to figure it out. Communicate with your team, collaborate with your team, but if the research isn't interesting, then it's not worth your time. So keep that in mind. Okay? Multimedia is always great. I want you guys to embed videos. I want you to keep it vibrant. I want you to learn different tools and then teach me about the different tools. But this should be fun. A sample page for sinus tachycardia. Somebody that's got a heartbeat that's going a little bit too quick. You can see a little picture that they put in. There are YouTube videos that you can link into this. Pretty much any research topic, really, YouTube's great for that. The idea of making sure that you've covered what is relevant for the anatomy and physiology is what's important. So this I expect to be several pages long on some of the cases, the ones that are more complicated. For the simpler cases, it might not be all that long. You may realize right away that you can narrow it down, but like I said, that's something you're going to learn as you go along. Diagnosis, obvious, right at the root of the problem, what's going on. You guys as a team have to decide what is your diagnosis. This is the most educated guess. Sometimes you're going to know exactly what it is, sometimes it's only going to be a really good guess, and sometimes it's not even all that certain. You're going to take a stab at it and see what happens. These are the basis of the medical shows like House and Grey's Anatomy, and some of the older shows like Quincy, one of the ones I grew up with. The idea of ruling everything out and taking a look at all the other facts that are going on with the patient and then the scenario, and then coming up with a shot, and coming up with a guess, and seeing what you can come up with. The next step is obviously treatment, so we're going to treat that diagnosis the best of our ability, but before you get there, please make sure that you include a couple things. On this page you can see, make sure it's not the cause, make sure it is the cause and not a symptom that you're describing. To do that, what you need is you have to support every piece of what's going on with the patient back with your diagnosis. You have to connect them and make sure that your diagnosis can explain whatever was going on with your patient and pretty much every step of what's going on with your patient. Demographics are important. The epidemiology of disease and pathology is an important aspect of medicine. That's why on your first PBL research page, or I shouldn't call it research, your organization page, it includes things like it's a boy, it's a girl, what's more relevant for a boy, what's more relevant for a girl, and any other factors going on. Race can have an issue with this. Dietary restrictions can have an issue with this. Demographics mean what is the likelihood that this is going to happen to, a white male between the ages of 17 and 25? What is the likelihood this is going to happen to a 55-year-old woman who has had 3 children? Things like that. That's what we're going to talk about in terms of demographics. That's what I want you to include. Here's a sample diagnosis. You can see the same format that we used before. Here's the demographics page. What's the statistics? Foods with the highest chance of poisoning. Make it interesting, make it relevant. If we're going to go with food poisoning, which we are in this example, what's going on and what did he eat? This is just a really cool colored slide. I'm not sure why it's there. Treatment. This is a video that I want you guys to upload in terms of addressing what treatment you want to use. So that means sitting down and you can do it a couple different ways. One way to consider is possibly doing a mock conversation with a patient where you are addressing the camera as a patient, or you can have somebody act with you, or you guys can do it as a team and collaborate on video. I think it'd be a great idea, but the idea is simple. If you are coming into a room to explain to a patient what's going on and what you're going to do, that's what this video is. So we want you to show intelligence, we want you to use the proper vocabulary, but we want you to show empathy, we want you to show the ability to connect with the patient, make it real, and that's why one of the questions we asked on our first assignment, the About Me presentations, was what was it like the last time you went to the doctor? If you have a doctor that you really like, think about why. Are they friendly? Are they accurate? Are they funny? Do they know a lot about you? Do they know a lot about your family? Do they keep it professional? What are the things that you like about a doctor's visit? And I want you guys to do a video that shows the same thing. So care, empathy, compassion, intelligence. Be confident in your treatment of your patient. And maybe someday you can look as competent as these actors who are dressed up like doctors and nurses. Here's a quick sample of a colleague, Mrs. Ching, who teaches at Punahou School in Hawaii. She teaches an MPS class. She's been teaching a couple of years, actually. She's my mentor for this. And she uploaded a video of a treatment section that she did, and I think it's a pretty good one, so I didn't bother trying to redo it. At the bottom of this, you can also see there's a hot page link to this presentation, the PowerPoint presentation, so you don't have to watch the whole YouTube video with my voice babbling in the background. You can scroll through the slides on your own. go for it. Have fun. If you have questions, let me know.